Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Reality Transformation Gathering. I am super excited to be here with you again and delighted to be here with Divine Harmony. Welcome, Harmony. Thank you so much for being a part of this event.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm honored.
Yes, wonderful to have you here. So everybody, as you are joining on Zoom, please go ahead and put your name and location into the chat so we can welcome you here and see where you are zooming in from today. And then I will go live on YouTube, bring in our YouTube community as well. So hang on for just a moment while I make that happen. Okay, so we should be live on YouTube any moment now. There we go, live on YouTube. So welcome and hi, everybody joining over there on YouTube. Definitely go ahead and put your name and location into the YouTube chat, and we will welcome you in. So let's see who we have here on Zoom. Welcome, Valerie in Ireland. Welcome, Maria in Costa Rica. Welcome, Ellen in Maine. And Jazone, that's a cool name, in Vancouver, Washington. Welcome, Sheila in Arkansas, P. Witt in Minnesota, Tonette in Norway today also, wonderful. Welcome, Keegan in Montenegro. Hi, Keegan, great to see you here. Welcome, Alan in Washington State, JJ in San Francisco, John in Bloomington, Indiana, Sarah in the UK, Nadine in Spain, Mary Sophia, north of Norway, welcome back. And Helen in the UK, Lynn in Cape Town, Jack in Boston. Welcome, everybody. We are so glad to have you with us today. And so, as I was saying, I am truly delighted to have Divine Harmony here with us today. Thank you, Harmony, for being here. I'm so excited about your topic of the Holy Grail, becoming the vessel. And I know you have a wonderful presentation prepared for us. So I will go ahead and introduce you to everyone here and we can begin. So Divine Harmony is a mother, mystic, astrologer, writer, and teacher. With her background in depth psychology and spirituality, she works to weave together the dark and the light, the mundane and the sacred, the depths and the heights in order to support personal awakening, healing, and wholeness. She sees astrology as an amazing alchemical tool for self-understanding and living a more conscious, integrated life. Her work includes teaching at festivals and summits, teaching astrology classes online, writing extensively, and consulting with clients. She has a special interest in the divine feminine, shadow work, and creating new and ancient myths that inspire human consciousness to awaken to and fully embody love so that we may bring heaven back to earth. I love that, and I love your work, Harmony. Thank you so much for all that you do. It's so inspiring, so beautiful. And yes, again, your topic today is the Holy Grail, becoming the vessel. I can't wait to see what you will share with us, and I will just let you take it away with your presentation.
Okay, so let me bring up my. Can you see that good? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, so thank you so much for the lovely introduction. And this talk is about the Holy Grail and what it means to become the vessel. This is, I have some art throughout that evokes the Grail. So this is called The Achievement of the Holy Grail by Edwin Austin Abbey. And I actually literally just taught like a 7-week class for Venus Retrograde that was called The Holy Grail, Becoming the Vessel. And it was a weaving of the Grail Mysteries, the Sophia Mysteries, and then working with Venus, like literally the astrology. And I'm actually in the process of formatting just the Holy Grail and Sophia teachings so that I can have them available as a class on my website, minus the Venus stuff, because that was timely. But it was a really beautiful journey, and some of that I'll be sharing with you today. So, what is the Holy Grail? There's a lot of ideas about what the Holy Grail is. Some say it's an object, and if it's an object, it has many manifestations. It's sometimes a cup, or a chalice, or a cauldron, or a bowl, or even a platter. Sometimes it's seen as a stone, and when it is seen as it's a stone, it's typically seen as coming from heaven. So, like a tektite or moldavite is often seen actually as the Holy Grail stone. It is also seen as the bloodline of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. If you know the Da Vinci Code, you've probably heard of that. You can see the Holy Grail in the heavens via constellations, one of which I'll be speaking of today. You can find them in your own body and your own being, and I'll be speaking of that today. The Holy Grail can also be an ideal that guides us and can be a manifestation of the Divine Mother, the Divine Feminine, or just the Divine period itself. So all of these things are often, what people think of when they think of the Holy Grail. This is a beautiful piece of art by Anael Anelia Pavlova, and it's one of my favorite Grail images. You see the awakened, luminous white heart with an eye above it, in this crystal Grail at her heart, and then she's surrounded by Sufi dancing angels. It evokes the holiness and the divinity of the feminine. So the Grail myth and the Four Hollows. So I'm not, in the class I taught, I spent like an hour teaching the Grail myth. So I'm going to give the very short version if you don't know what it is, just to kind of get you to understand it. If you do know what it is, then you already know. So the Grail myth, there's a Fisher King, and he's a king, and he has a wound, and it's often seen as being in the groin, and it's actually symbolic of a sexual wound or a wound from a weapon of war. The wound is born actually of lust and violence. His land becomes a wasteland because he's cut himself off from his soul in the feminine, which is what lust and violence do to us, regardless of gender. Only a pure fool in this myth story who has an open mind, who's receptive and is not coming from ego dominance, but is instead coming from purity of heart, soul, and spirit. Only he has the capacity to see the Grail, ask the question or questions, which is another slide, and I'll talk more about it, and then he can help the king heal and heal the land. So in the Grail myth, there's these four hallows, these four elemental tools, which you might notice are also the four treasures of the Tuatha De Danann, which are the fairy people of the Celtic lands. And there's so many versions of this myth. So you actually have to kind of study all of them to put them all together and see the commonalities. So like some of the myths only has two of these tools in it, and some have three, and some have four. But when you look at all four, the four tools, the four hallows, are the bleeding lance, the broken sword, the silver platter, and the golden grail. And you might notice that those are the four elements. So the lance and the sword are fire and air. And you'll notice they're weapons of war. They kill, they cut, they slice. They are also things that can help protect and defend. And then the platter and the grail are the earth and the water element, and they're dishes literally for nourishment. Like we put food and water on a plate and a cup, right? And they're nourishing, they're nurturing, they're providing of life-sustaining food and beverage. So in these four hallows that correlate with the four elements, fire or the lance is actually ego and will. It's not spirit. Fire is not spirit. Fifth element, ether, is spirit. Fire is ego and will. Air is the mind. Earth is the body. And water is the soul. And then, of course, ether is spirit. And ether can infuse actually all four elements and spiritualize them. And when ether infuses something, it will show up as glowing with a light, luminous, like the Holy Grail is often seen in these myths. And so with the platter and the grail, you actually see them as numinous in these myths. They're, first of all, shiny metals, one's silver, one's gold, silver of the moon, gold of the sun. But they also, both, and if not both, definitely the Grail, are shown as like glowing with this like numinous light. Whereas the lance and the sword, they're bleeding and broken. And so this symbolizes the misuse of ego, will, lance, fire, and mind sword, air, which cuts them both off from the divine, from spirit. And so this is what the myth is essentially teaching. This is another beautiful, one of my favorite artistic images by John Duncan. It's the Riders of the Sidhe, and they're the people of the fairy mounds, essentially connected to the Tuatha De Danann. And if you notice here, here's the glowing grail. It has the moon in it. Also notice that the woman holding the grail has an aura around her head like a saint. The earth element's behind her right here, and he's holding on to a stone. The fire is actually shown as the tree, which is essentially what makes the spear. Spears are made out of wood, and then they have the little pointy thing usually attached to them back then in the ancient days. And then the air in the back is the sword right here. And so we have serpents right here and dragons on the heads of the yang elements of air and fire. And then the earth has horns and the water has the halo, and she's the one holding the grail itself. And it literally shows the progression of the elements from earth to air to fire to water. Obviously, fire and water are leading. They're considered to be the ultimate yang element is fire, and yin is water, whereas earth and air are supposed to be a mix of the two with one leading. And then also notice that the two in the front, their horses are unicorns. They have horns, whereas the ones in the back are regular horses, obviously beautifully decorated. So it's this art is evoking mystical truths about the elements and about the Grail myth. So there's questions that are asked in the Grail myth. And first and foremost, it's just to understand that a question implies we do not know the answer and we are open to hearing the answer, the truth, finding or discovering something. So it's something that brings us back to beginner's mind when we ask a question. We're not coming from, I already know the answer. We're coming from, oh, I wonder. And then there's this openness. It implies a seeking. And even back then, when the men would go out on their quests, quest is embedded in that word question. You know, it is a seeking, a looking for something. So what's important is not so much the question itself, but the openness and the receptivity to learn something new and to find an answer, you know, that's drawing you in. So not saying we already know it and shutting down. So the four, well, typically it's like three questions, but rarely that last one there is listed. And then again, not all the myths have all these questions, but if you study all the myths, you see these common questions show up in different ways. So the first question is, whom does the Grail serve? The second is, how can I serve the Grail? The third is, what ails the king? So why is he wounded? And then rarely, who is the Grail? Which I personally think is the most important question. So in short, I'm going to give you the answers to these questions, but the answers are not the point. The point is the journey. You know, so it's not about the destination. It's about the whole process of getting there. For the Grail myth, it's not really about the answers to the questions. It's about the asking of the question, the openness and receptivity, and being actually on the journey. So whom does the Grail serve? It serves the divine. How can I serve the Grail? By embodying my divinity and serving the divine. What ails the king? He is cut off from the divine feminine due to a sexual war-like wound in his consciousness due to ego and or mind dominating. Now, the who is the Grail, I think is like probably the most evocative question of it all. And the answer to that is it's the Divine Mother, the Divine Feminine herself. Her womb of creation is symbolized by the Grail. And this one was only asked in the version of the myth that's Wagner's version, essentially Parsifal, the pure fool, when he arrives at the lake where the king is, the king, Fisher King is, he says, who is the Grail? And then the person with him laughs and says, that cannot be spoken. But if you are called to its service, the knowledge will not be hidden for long. And so this is the only version of the Grail myth that I'm aware that this question is asked, but I think it's probably the deepest one. So this is a Cherokee prophecy. A woman's highest calling is to lead a man to his soul as to unite him with source. A man's highest calling is to protect woman so she is free to walk the earth unharmed. So, first and foremost, just to understand when I talk about gender here, I'm not talking, there is a gender piece to things, but this is also all about our inner masculine, inner feminine, first and foremost. And so the highest calling of a woman is to lead a man to his soul, and she is the grail that does that. The highest calling of a man is to protect her so she can walk the earth unharmed, and that's the divine masculine protector. So remember, the bleeding lance and the broken sword, they're tools that are weapons, but they're also, able to be tools of protection and defending. And that's the original template of the divine masculine. So in the Grail myth, in this Cherokee tradition and other traditions in the tarot, which is my next slide, you see this truth hidden in plain sight. And it's essentially the truth that it is the feminine that connects us to the divine, and the feminine needs to lead. And the masculine is what protects the feminine so she can receive from the divine and share the divinity with him. And he needs to follow her lead. So you see this in the tarot. So these are rider weight. I was trying to find images that were all like the same size and the same coloring, but didn't work. Anyhow, the lovers, judgment, and the devil, they're obviously not in order. If they're going to be in order, the devil should be in the middle. But the one I want you to focus on is the one in the middle. So that's why I put judgment there. So I'll speak to the other two in a second. But notice there's a woman and a man and a woman plus a child, a woman and a man. So we've got this dynamic of feminine and masculine showing up in these cards and throughout the whole tarot, by the way. But so in the judgment card, there's the man, the child, the woman, and this card is called the resurrection card as well. You can see they're like coming out of coffins and they're floating on water. And there's another trinity across from them of another father, child, mother. And so notice in this card, she's taller than him, right? Her outstretched arms are receiving all the rays of music that are falling from the trumpet of the angel. And then what she's receiving, she is sharing with her partner and her divine child. So it's the feminine in us that receives from the divine, and it's the masculine in us that protects the feminine so that she's safe to receive. When we're thinking of this from an inward process, it's like boundaries, right? Being able to say no, that's like how we protect ourselves. That's our inner masculine. So this isn't just about gender, as I mentioned. We all have masculine and feminine, but there's also a gender piece as well. So here's the lovers and the devil. It's such an interesting duo to look at side by side. So in the lovers card, he's looking at her, she's looking up at the angel, and she's got the serpent behind her, and he's got this like flaming tree behind him. Now, on the devil side, she's kind of looking straight. He's still looking at her. She's got little grapes on her tail, which kind of evokes the mother vine, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And he's actually getting his tail inflamed by the devil. And so, interestingly, if you notice, in these two cards, she's on the left, he's on the right, both of them. But in this card, they swap places. She's now on the right and he's on the left. Now, this is us looking at them. But if we put ourselves in their position, particularly if you put yourself in the position of these three in the back, because she's obviously kind of like facing him sideways. If I was going to put myself in the position of the woman, when I'm here in the lover's card and the devil, I'm actually on the right and he's on my left. If I'm in her position looking out. When you're looking at the card, she's on the left, but in her position, he's on her left. In this card, she actually gets put in the position where he's on her right. And the feminine is the left side and the masculine is the right side. And that's like known in, a lot of mystical teachings. And so it's almost like they got put in the right position when they finally come to the resurrection card for judgment. And so, the entire tarot has this mythic lens hidden in it. If you have the eyes to see and ears to hear, this whole teaching on the divine feminine is embedded in the Rider-Waite. So these are the Pleiades, the seven sisters dancing. And in the Grail myth, the feminine elements, earth and water, still retain their purity and their connection to ether, divinity. And part of that is shown by being shiny silver and gold, but also they're often seen as emanating or luminous, sometimes both of them, sometimes the platter and the Grail, sometimes only the Grail. So unfortunately, one of the ways the feminine has retained her connection to spirit is by going up and out, living from the heart chakra up. The Pleiades sisters, you see it in their myth, they had to be turned into doves or birds to fly away from being chased. Or you can see it in the myth of Estrella, the last of the divine beings who were here on earth, and she finally had to go because the consciousness got so low vibration, it just broke her heart, the anger and the violence and all the horribleness, and she had to go. And so she went up and out and left. And so this is the work actually, is embodiment, bringing the light all the way down and in. The feminine needs to fully arrive and fully embody in all of us, regardless of gender. And the wasteland is a wasteland because he cut himself off from his feminine. So in the Grail myth, the will, the ego, the mind, the fire, and the air need to surrender to the body, to the soul, and most importantly, to spirit. And the body, soul, led by spirit is what needs to lead. The will, the ego mind has to serve. So what are the grails in the heavens? So in the class I taught, we actually worked with 3 throughout the course and then a 4th one at the end. And in this talk, I'm just going to talk about one because I wanted to give like a deep teaching on actually one of them instead of lightly mention all of them. So we're going to talk about Virgo, the Virgin, the embodiment of the Grail, lying on the ecliptic. So the sun actually moves through this Grail. The other ones, the sun doesn't go through. So the constellations that are on the ecliptic are the zodiacal constellations, the signs, as we call them in tropical astrology. So I want to explore Virgo. This is a visual from Stellarium, and you can see Virgo here. This is supposed to be the top of her. This is the bottom legs. You can see she's actually really big compared to the other constellations. She's the largest of the zodiacal constellations. The sun takes about 45 days to go through the whole constellation, so not 30, which we're told in tropical astrology, right? The sun moves through each sign for 30 days, but Virgo, it takes a month and a half. Living sky, Virgo. So here's some quotes by Rumi and Merlin Stone to inspire the Virgo teachings. Woman is the radiance of God. She is not a creature. She is the creator. At the very dawn of religion, God was a woman. Do you remember? So Virgo, the Virgin Mother, is the second largest constellation, second only to Hydra, that actually lies beneath her. You can see the tail end of Hydra here. It's Latin for virgin, also maiden. And Virgo actually has 20 stars with known planets, more than any other constellation. So there's a lot of progeny for the Virgin Mother here. The original meaning of virgin was woman whole unto herself, with the capacity to create, self-create by parthenogenesis, like create all within herself without external male assistance. Virgin also has etymological connections to meanings like grow, green, like food. And if you know Virgo, you know she carries like a shaft of wheat and she's connected to, food. But also 2 of the 3 harvest festivals in the 8 gates of the sun fall with the sun at the top of Virgo, at the bottom of Virgo. And then the other one is just over there in Leo. So that whole season when the sun moves through living sky, Leo and Virgo, is the harvest season connected to food. And Estrella, the goddess I mentioned, is the last of the deities, divine beings who were here on earth, is often associated with Virgo, but so is Demeter and Ceres, so the Greek and Roman version of the Earth Mother. Even Persephone is sometimes associated with this because that's her mother, is Demeter, Ceres. Isis, Virgin Mary, Ishtar, Taltu are also all like earth goddesses and virgin goddesses that are seen as associated with this constellation. So, the etymology of the named stars. So, part of how I find the deeper ancient meaning of the constellations, pre-patriarchal, is looking at the etymology of the stars because literally hidden in plain sight are deeper threads about what was there before, deeper meanings. And I taught a whole year and a day mystery school all about this called Stargate Mystery School, and it's actually where these teachings are coming from. So, these are the names of the named stars, minus the ones that they like named in 2019, like so the older named stars. We have Heze, which means under the girdle of the Virgin, which implies what's under her girdle? The womb. Oh my God, my dog. Sorry. UPS is here. It also means damp, humid, wet, green, like Mother Earth, or like her yoni. Minilauva is Arabic for the very first, the one whose existence is without a beginning. Eldafar means repeatedly forgiving, the merciful one, also to cover, protect, or perhaps suppress. Purima is a Roman goddess of prophecy, a water goddess, and one of the stars is named after her. Spica, arguably the best known star in Virgo, is ear of grain or wheat, so that association with food and nourishment. Remember the platter and the grail, the food and the water. Sirma is Arabic for train of a garment, which is implying the bottom of her dress. I apologize. I don't know why my dog keeps barking. Usually UPS is quite quick. Vindimiatrix means grape harvestress. Matrix means mother, womb, source, or origin, the mother vine. So remember on that tarot card when we saw the grapes on her tail, the mother vine is evoked by that. And then last but not least, Zanaya, which in Muslim means beautiful, radiant, but also a later patriarchal interpretation of that word and name is woman who has unlawful relations with a man, adulteress or prostitute, which is essentially what the virgin who self-created by parthenogenesis kind of devolved into as kind of patriarchal consciousness took over. So here we see Virgo. I put in the imagery with stellium so you can see the Virgin. There's her feet, and that's her head. And you can see Crater, one of the other grails, by the way, Crater the cup on Hydra the serpent. And here's Bootes and Arcturus. And Arcturus and Spica are really interesting stars because they're actually at the exact degree, same degree within minutes, like maybe 20 minutes of each other, but obviously not the same declination. Spica is close to the ecliptic, whereas Arcturus is up there, off the ecliptic. The ancient Arabs saw Arcturus as the protector star of Spica. And so they called Spica Al-Haris al-Sama, protector of heaven and the unarmed one. And they called him Haris al-Samak, protector of the defenseless one. So she's the protector of heaven, and she's unarmed, and he is the protector of the defenseless one. So we see here literally the divine feminine, divine mother, provider of life and of the sacred, and her protector, the divine masculine. Just like the Cherokee prophecy, just like what's hidden in the tarot. So in the cycle of the ages, in the dark ages, which is when we go through the night signs, which I'll talk about in a few slides when we get to Dendera, we forget the mother. And then during the day signs, and especially during the dawning of the new age that we're in right now, we start waking up and remembering the mother is the origin of everything. And this is actually where we are right now. And it's part of what the Grail myth has held and hidden, until we're ready to remember what the myth was about to begin with. So what are the grails in the body? I teach this content in embodied astrology in Stargate Mystery School, and then also astrology in your shadow. So there's three grails in the body, and then the body is actually grail. So there's technically four, but there's the grail in the head, which is the grail of wisdom. It's associated with Uranus, the higher mind, the higher octave of the lower mind. Grail in the heart is the grail of love, associated with Neptune, the higher heart. And then there's the grail in the womb or the hara, if you don't have a womb, the hara, down here in the pelvic bowl, which is the grail of power associated with Pluto. When all three grails are activated and awakened, your entire body becomes a grail and you become the vessel. And so that is the work of becoming the grail, which I think is maybe the next, I don't know, that's a different slide. This is just an image so you can see visually the upper grail, literally in the cranium of your head with the stem of the grail, chalice can like anchor into your throat. The middle grail is the upper part of it is the thymus, the higher heart, and the lower part anchors into your physical heart and your heart chakra. And then the lower grail is like the pelvic bowl. And for women, their womb sits there. So that's a big part of the woman's grail of power. And then the part of the chalice of the stem like anchors into your root and can even go, into the earth itself. There's different traditions. It's funny because I didn't know about this. I was in England in like 2018 and I just had this download and I saw these grails in our body and I was like writing all this stuff down. And then as I started studying it, I realized there's traditions that talk about this. They talk about the three Dantians, or maybe you've heard the head, the heart, and the gut. This is like a teaching that you can find through all the mystical traditions. It's well known. Let's put it that way. They also, I think, in the Celtic tradition, saw it as three cauldrons in the body. So what does it mean to become the Grail? I sort of just answered that question, but it essentially means you fully become the vessel that houses spirit. Your higher self fully descends into and through your human self, and you bring the light all the way down and in. So you embody your higher self. You bring heaven to earth through your own being. And essentially, the purity of the elements is what allows spirit to come in and reside through them. So, pure earth spiritualizes the body and sensation. Pure water spiritualizes the soul and emotion. Pure air spiritualizes the mind and intellect. And pure fire spiritualizes the will and the ego. So, the purity of the elements becomes a receptacle for spirit to come in and through. And this is actually why it's so concerning, all the toxins that we have on Earth right now, in the air and the water and the food, because it's creating issues with the purity of the elements. It's really important to be doing things like detoxing and eating healthy and making sure your water is clean, because the things that come in through the elements that are not pure can actually affect our consciousness. And, it's something to be aware of. So the work to become the Grail, I mean, anything you're drawn to that helps you heal and awaken can be appropriate, but I'm just giving you some ideas above. The study of astrology is actually quite amazing for blowing your mind open and helping you to see there's more to life than just this 3D world here down here. It's like looking up at the heavens, but also the study of mythology, any kind of spiritual studies can be amazing for above. For below, shadow work and therapy, because dealing with our unresolved wounds and pain that block us, that keep us stuck in the 3D or keep us disembodied, going up and out because we don't want to deal with what's going on down here, is the below work. And then the within work is the integration work. So embodiment work, yoga, somatic healing, physical practices that help us integrate below and above and bring it into union within. It can essentially help us integrate that mind blown open energy, that often happens, I think, for all of us when we first get on the spiritual path. It's just like we start learning things and it like blows our mind. But if we stay in the mind blown without dealing with down what's below, we're going to be kind of like floating off the planet. So we want to integrate that expansion up here with the descension down here, ascend and descend, and then bring it, into integration. bringing heaven and earth essentially together in our bodies, in our being. So this is a image by Nicholas Roerich. He's one of my favorite mystical artists. And the Holy Grail becoming the vessel, I actually used this image for my class I just taught, and I got permission from his museum. But notice here, there's this white little box and it's glowing, right? Like they talk about the Grail, glowing in the Grail myth. And notice up here that these three stars, that's the belt of Orion. And you can see the other two here. Orion's belt always points to Sirius. So Sirius is a Grail star. So is Spica. So how is this connected to the age of Aquarius? So in the 26,000 year cycle, or 2,507.80 or whatever, I'm rounding up, obviously, there are two turning points, Leo and Aquarius. And we are at this turning point right now. So the Grail teachings have preserved the hidden truth about the divine feminine. And it is her return to Earth that heralds the shift. So here's a picture of the Sphinx. The Leo Aquarius two turning points are literally symbolized by the Sphinx. Before the Sphinx's head was turned into the pharaoh, it is said to have been a woman. And Aquarius actually was a she before it was a he, which I have a whole slide on, so I'll talk about in a second. You can also see the Sphinx as the Virgo Leo neighboring signs. But when we're looking at the ages, and particularly the Leo Aquarius axis and why it's a turning point, you can see it hidden in the mystery of the Sphinx. So the tarot cards for Leo and Aquarius are Strength and Star. So look on the left, the Leo card is the Strength card, and you see a woman dressed in white, evoking purity, but she also has vines and roses and a crown of flowers, and she's just fertile. And she has the infinity sign above her head. She is not dominating that lion. She's sublimating the lower desires. He's like actually kind of licking her. It's hard to see because his tongue is like the same color as the rest of him, but his tongue is coming out and she's like petting him, but also sublimating, the primal animal drive. Now, the Aquarius card is the star card, and the 7 white stars are the Pleiades. The big, big yellow star is Sirius. And she's naked, evoking a different layer of purity, right? This woman here, she's white with all the flowers, but the star's naked. And she's pouring water in her 2 urns, or cups, or chalices, whatever you want to call it. One of them she's pouring into the water, one of them she's pouring onto the land, both of which are the feminine elements. Her right foot is like standing on the water, and her left knee is kneeling on the land. And these two evoke the feminine mystical energies of Leo and Aquarius. So I'm showing the panels of Dendera, the Temple of Hathor Ayunet, I think was the ancient name. And there's 2 panels that I'm focusing on, and then I'll also show the Dendera Zodiac, which is like the circle one. But we've got here, and I hope you can see, I mean, it's hard to see the detail, but it's the best I could do. So these are the night signs, and it's in the red, it's showing the tropical signs. So Capricorn, Capricornus, Sagittarius, Scorpius, Libra, Virgo, Leo. But there's also other ones here. I will say in these 2 panels, there's a couple that I don't agree with. So, but it doesn't matter. I just, these ones are what I'm here to point out. So these are the night signs. And normally the sun moves this way, right? Like we go from Leo to Virgo to Libra. That's the way the sun goes. But the ages go backwards. So everybody is facing backwards. And this is evoking the ages. And we're going from Capricorn backwards to Sag, to Scorpius, to Libra, so on and so forth. And essentially, this is the panel where her eyes are closed. It's the night sign. So the mother is asleep. And we see here, Leo is the last of the signs, although Hydra, the serpent, is showing there, but these are the top, the ones that the sun actually goes through, the zodiacal signs. Leo is the last of the signs. It's heading towards the womb of the mother. She's got a very long body. She's just stretch herself out, but her womb's over here by her feet. And so they're all facing towards her womb, and they're actually leaving her head and her heart and heading to her womb. And it says here, Cancer ascending. Cancer is shown in two ways in the Dendera zodiac as a beetle, which was the ancient Egyptian image for Cancer, and then crab, which is the more modern Greek and Roman version. He hasn't listed here that Cancer is ascending, but for me, she's descending. She's going into the womb of the mother because everybody's facing that way, and you're going to see her pop out on the other one. So here are the day signs. There's Cancer the crab popping out of her womb legs with the sun coming out of her womb and the face of Hathor. And so you can see here Cancer, Gemini, Taurus, Aries, Pisces, Aquarius. And you see them all moving from the womb towards the head of the mother. And then, her heart is right here behind her breasts. And so on these day signs with her eyes open, which you can't really see, but anyhow, the mother's eyes are open in the day signs. They're coming out of their womb and they're, emerging and then heading to the heart and the head of the mother. One thing to notice is that Cancer is not on the panel. Cancer is only shown as going into the womb or coming out of the womb of the mother, not shown in this lineup or shown here. It's hard to see, but the little winged beetle is showing behind her breast and her heart on both panels, but you kind of can't see it there. So Cancer is always shown as in the heart and the womb of the mother. Cancer stands out in that way. And it even does on the ceiling, zodiac ceiling of Dendera here in the circle. So the green are all the zodiacal constellations, the zodiac. And so starting with Aries, here's Aries the ram, Taurus the bull, Gemini the twins. Here's Cancer the crab, but then you have to kind of go down below her to get to Leo, the lion, Virgo the virgin, Libra the scales, Scorpio the scorpion, Sagittarius the archer, horseman, centaur, Capricornus the sea goat, Aquarius with the water pitchers, and then Pisces, back to Pisces, which they're showing Pegasus in between Pisces. So they're not just featuring Pisces, the zodiacal constellation. Pegasus is always associated with Pisces, and it's very important. But Cancer stands out because all these go in a pretty even line, but Cancer kind of juts up, and then you have to go back down to Leo. So you're seeing Cancer being shown in a way that stands out on both the panels and this ceiling of Dendera. And it's important. So this is an image evoking Aquarius, the water bearer, female energy, and then Leo, the lion energy. Could also be Virgo and Leo, but Aquarius and Leo are the two turning points, the tipping points. If you recall, they were both at the end of the panels, right? Let me go back for a second. Leo is at the end, about to go into the womb of the mother. Aquarius is at the end, about to go into the mouth and the heart of the mother. So these two, stand out, and they're the turning points of the ages. They're actually really important. So they're these kind of tipping points, almost like, they talk about the dawning of the age of Aquarius. Well, at dawn, the sun's not fully up yet, but you see the light, right? Same thing with dusk. Sunset, but there's still light for a while. So you can kind of conceive of Leo and Aquarius as the dusk and the dawn, if you will. So here is an image of spring equinox 2025 from where I live in Asheville, but it doesn't matter. Before the sun has risen, and we look at the night sky, and what do we see? In the east, before the sun, is Aquarius and Pegasus. So the ancient way of calculating ages was to see what was rising before the sun on the equinox, not what constellation is the sun in at the time of the equinox, because the moment the sun rises, you're not seeing any stars, and you're not seeing them a bit before as well as the dawn comes. So Bernadette Brady is an amazing astrologer who does a lot of work with the fixed stars, and she has a great article about this. You can read it. Google Bernadette Brady, Who is Riding in the Fiery Boat of the Sun? That's the name of the article. So she says since the 1500s, we've had Aquarius rising. I actually found that even it's since the 1200s, when I was studying the Cathars and what happened to them in the 1200s, I literally saw Aquarius rising before the spring equinox sun. So you clearly see Aquarius is rising along with Pegasus, and we've been in the age of Aquarius since then, but the ages are 2000 plus years, and we got a lot more to go. So I had this chat with Walter Crudenton, who is an amazing writer, researcher. Really have a lot of respect for him and his work. He has a book called The Lost Star of Myth and Time. And he told me something that was like a puzzle piece that helped me see the Dendera zodiac ceiling differently. So he told me that Yukteswar, who's an Indian guru, had made a comment in one of his texts that the ages used to be calculated from fall and autumn equinox, not spring. And that what was rising at fall or autumn equinox is essentially what was falling or ending, which is kind of the same thing, right? Because whatever's rising in spring is going to be the opposite of what's rising in fall. And the ages act as binaries. They like work together. So we have Aquarius rising at spring, we have Leo rising at fall. So Leo is setting, Aquarius is rising. It doesn't matter, like the mythic lens is still there, but it's just a different way to look at it. Makes a lot more sense though when you're looking at the Dendera panels, because I want to go back because you need to see this. It implies that once we get to Aquarius, we're at the end of the day signs here. And after Aquarius, it goes into the mouth and the heart of the mother, and you're going to pop back out into the night. But that's not where we're at. We're at the beginning of the dawning of the age of Aquarius and the light returning. But if you read the panels as the equinox at the fall, that makes sense because Leo is what's rising at fall, and Leo is the end of the night signs and is about to go into the womb of the mother. The rebirth happens in Cancer, but we start to see the dawning, right, at the very end, just like, it's almost like the sun rises when we're in Cancer, but we're going to start seeing some of the dawn coming once we get to Leo. And so that piece of information he gave me, I was like, oh, all right. Now that makes a lot more sense with the zodiac panels, because I didn't understand. I was like, but Aquarius looks like we're heading into the dark half after we move through that. Anyhow, so let's see. Here's a picture of what's rising at fall equinox this year. Leo. But remember, fall, so if you know your solar gates, like the gates of the sun, spring equinox is the resurrection of the sun from the dark half of the year, from the deep of winter. Whereas fall is the tipping point where we tip into the dark half. So if we're calculating from fall, we're literally looking at what is falling into the darkness, right? Not what's springing up and resurrecting. So that's just, a nuance that I thought was really important when looking at the ages. So Aquarius, I was looking at all these images of like a female Aquarius water bearer, and there's tons. And this I've never seen before. It's actually by Teodim Art on Etsy, and she has like really beautiful images of the astrology signs, of other things. There's a very beautiful goddess feminine energy there. And Aquarius is the water bearer and the Grail bearer, and she's a she, not a he, despite the fact that we're told she is, because the Grail in the urn is always bearer, whatever, by a woman. The wells are tended to by women of the wells, and that's because Grails and urns and wells are symbols of the womb. So Aquarius is a she, and the return of the divine feminine is key right now. And here's just an image of Leo from a zoomed in image of Leo from the Dendera zodiac ceiling, the circular one. You see Leo the lion, he's on Hydra the serpent, and then there's this woman behind him holding his tail, almost like the strength card from the tarot. And so we've got this woman behind taming the ego will. The masculine needs to serve the feminine, not the other way around. It may appear that she's behind, but actually she's guiding the lion from behind, and he's in front of her like the protector, which is what the tarot essentially evokes. So here's just images, up close images of the beetle Kefri, the Cancer, Egyptian image for Cancer. And then that's the crab, although it's like some of it's kind of coming off, so it's harder to see. This is when it's descending into her womb at the end of the night signs. And this is when it's coming out of her womb legs at the beginning of the day signs. And the full rebirth happens in Cancer. And that's when we are in the heart womb of the mother. So here's Cancer. I have two images because I wanted you to see the full sky, but it's like kind of hard. So zoomed out, there's a lot of detail. But anyhow, here's Cancer. And just notice right below Cancer is the head of Hydra. And then above Cancer is the tail of Draco. And then this is a zoomed in one. So here's Cancer. This is the star of Cancer that's right on the ecliptic. And then here's the head, the most forward head star of Hydra. And here's the tail star of Draco. So the middle of Cancer, like right where the X crosses, that middle star is 9 degrees, 4 minutes, 31 seconds of Leo in tropical astrology. Despite the fact that's Cancer, the constellation, in tropical, it's 9 and change Leo. The tail star of Draco is 1041 Leo. And the head star of Hydra is 1039 Leo. So these are the degrees based on the declination and where they fall according to the ecliptic. But literally, these stars link up from 9 to 11 Leo. Essentially, the middle of Cancer with the dragon above, the tail of the dragon above, and the head of the water serpent dragon below. And I think that this is part of why Cancer is the gateway, because of its connection with these two serpentine energies. So, there's just a lot you can learn by just looking at the sky. So here's some images of the primordial mother. Egyptian Net on the left, also called Neith. Hindu Aditi. This is the mother of the world, painted by Jafra Boscher, or not mother of the world. What does he call her? Oh, I forget. There's another image that I'm going to show you that's Mother of the World. There's a different title for this one, I forgot. And then you can see Kali right there. So all the most ancient myths speak of a primordial mother that was there before all time and all creation. You see it in Kali, you see it in Net or Neith, you see it in Asherah, and even Sophia. So part of the class that I taught, we worked with the Sophia teachings. And before all creation, before there was anything or anyone, the mother was there. She was the void out of which everything came into form. And she creates the Father and then the Son. And in the Sophia myth, it's interesting because there's the original Sophia that creates everything, but she also manifests as the last aeon, which is that, I am the first and the last, the Alpha and the Omega. It's almost like she's so massive and then she downgrades herself into the smallest to come to Earth to infuse everything with a spark of Sophia. So anyhow, the whole teaching in the Sophia myth that most people have heard of is actually a corruption of the original teaching. They talk about how Sophia, the lowest aeon, and they've lost touch with Sophia as the name of the original mother. They say that she tried to create without her partner, and that's how she created all this evil in the world. But actually, the mother created everything. Someone downline tried to create without their counterpart. And then the mother manifested as the lowest aeon, Sophia, to come down to earth to try and rectify things. So she's the first and the last, which is a common mythic archetypal energy that you can read in a lot of mystical stories. So we're all on this journey of remembering, we come into the 3D world and this density, we forget. We forget who we are, we forget where we came from, but we can remember, and that's what this time is all about, this time of the tipping into this age. And the first thing we need to remember is her, as she's the source. And she's ultimately beyond male and female. I mean, she's everything, the original oneness. So it's not a battle of supremacy between the genders, But we do need to understand that when the ego, will, and mind are supreme, born of the masculine who's separated from the feminine, all that does is create destruction. So that's why the ego, will, and mind cannot lead. It's why the masculine needs to serve the feminine and follow. And we essentially have been living in an inverted world where we've turned these basic truths upside down, but that's essentially what the Dark Ages were about and the dark half of the cycle. So I'm going to leave you with a dream I had several years ago. Well, first, let me just say this image on the left is by Louis de Laval, and it's called Female Saints. I love this image. Looks like a golden serpent or dragon with scales, and it's like all these women with, auras, enlightened auras. And then the image on the right is the Lady of the Lake, and you'll see why I put that one there. So this dream evokes what I want to share here. So I had this dream. I'm standing at a lake under the full moon at night, and the Lady of the Lake starts to rise. But very quickly, I realized it is not one Lady of the Lake. Thousands upon thousands of women are rising out of the lake. And then this loud, booming voice proclaims, it's not the return of the one, it's the return of the many. And so I believe that we're all here right now, incarnated at this time together, all the ladies of the lake throughout time, all the Grail bearers, all the Grail knights, and the sacred protectors and defenders of the divine feminine. And the feminine and the masculine are called to embody their divinity. And it's not a battle for supremacy, it's a call to union. Just like the chalice and the blade, you probably heard of those, that evokes the feminine and the masculine. The chalice cannot fit in the blade, but the blade can be received by the chalice. So the blade surrenders, the chalice receives, the merging brings the two together in holy union, paroscamos. So this is an inner process, first and foremost. Many are looking for it without, but haven't done the journey within. It is also external. It can be external in the form of sacred union, but it has to be anchored and embodied within first. And this is essentially how we become the Grail, embodying our divinity, bringing heaven to earth within our own being, letting our feminine lead and our masculine follow and protect. And then that union within births the union without. So this is the last artistic image I just want to show. It's also Nicholas Roerich. It's called Mother of the World. Notice Orion's belt here. This is the Big Dipper. Big Dipper always points to Arcturus. What's always below Arcturus? Spica. What does Orion's belt always point to? Sirius. So he's like embedded all this mystical energy in his paintings. It's kind of amazing. And the last thing I want to say is we were talking about this before we got on to chat, but there's all this stuff happening at the Aries point. Neptune just moved into Aries. Saturn's about to move into Aries, May 24th. Next year, February 2026, we have a Saturn-Neptune conjunction at the first degree of Aries. The Sabian symbol for the first degree of Aries shows a woman rising out of the ocean and a seal is embracing her. Seals are often seen as symbols for shields and protectors. So it's literally a symbol that evokes the divine feminine rising out of the unconscious and the divine masculine welcoming her and protecting her. And this degree is up big time in the collective right now. So it's like a seeding moment, if you will. So that's my logo. Thank you for listening. Do you want me to leave this up? Because I don't know if you need me to go back to some image or anything, or I can take it down.
Some of the questions are asking a little bit about the images. So yeah, whatever, either
I'll
way.
leave it up.
Thank you so much, Harmony. This has been a profound journey, way, way, way in and very deep. So thank you for this. I love what you said about these true and original roles of the feminine and the masculine within us. And
Mhm.
what an incredible gift you've given us here to make that conscious, right? Because in addition to, healing work or astrology or whatever we may be doing as we're following our paths and following what we love to explore, just making that conscious of the feminine is the part of us that can connect to the divinity. And
Mhm.
she needs to be allowed to do that, right? And then the masculine is the part of us who keeps her safe so that she can do
Mhm.
that. It's just so powerful for us to be able to kind of consciously cultivate those two aspects within ourselves.
Yeah, and it's just hidden in all the mystical traditions, that same teaching, the Cherokee, the tarot. I mean, it's like it's all there to see and receive.
Yeah. And I love what you shared about the Dendera zodiac and the other Dendera zodiac and the meaning there and Cancer being in the womb. And actually there's a question about that, which maybe I will go to first here from questions. And thank you all for your great questions in the chat. If you have any more, put them there and we'll get to as many as we can. So Allison is saying, can you expand on the significance of Cancer as already being in the womb and heart?
Well, so let me actually go back to the image because I think that'll be most useful. Uh, So this is Cancer as Kepler the beetle. Like, so here's the lineup, right? All the constellations are lined up walking on this little pathway, which is the body, above, I guess, the body of the mother. But Cancer's the one that's standing out as not up there. It's not on that, walkway. It's always going into the womb of the mother, coming out of the womb of the mother, but this is the crab version. And then you can't see here at all, but there is like a Kefri beetle in like with the wings behind her breasts in her heart on both panels. So it's like hidden in the sacred imagery here that Cancer, it has some kind of different function, let's say. And to me, what they were saying is pay attention to when Cancer is what is rising or setting. So, and again, that different way of looking at the equinox, having it be fall and calculating was the piece that made me understand the panels because I couldn't understand them when Aquarius clearly is at the end and then we're going to just tip, go in her mouth and her heart and then come pop out in the dark signs or the night signs when her eyes are closed. I couldn't understand it. But when I understood that it's Leo that's the turning point, because of what's rising right now at fall equinox, then I was like, oh yeah. So in Cancer, we're not in Cancer yet, but Cancer would be like the brilliance of the sun now having risen. But we are at the dawning. The dawning of the age of Aquarius is kind of appropriately named. So we're seeing the light. The light is coming in and we're heading to that. So I hope that answered your question, but if it didn't, ask me again or clarify.
There's an interesting thing too about, we have these constellations, Orion and opposite Orion's Ophiuchus, that are no longer considered zodiac signs, but
Yep.
at least in ancient Sumeria they were, and possibly in far ancient Egypt. We don't know for sure.
Yeah.
They're here. They're both, here in the Dendera zodiac, and they lead us from Taurus to Cancer.
Mm.
Orion and Sirius, and they're Osiris and Isis, so that's really interesting too. Like they are leading us to this birthing place at the womb.
And they're the guardians of, the galactic center and the anti-galactic center. They're on that galactic equator line. Whereas these constellations are all on the sun's line of movement, the ecliptic. So where they intersect is obviously like really important.
In place. Yes. Yes. So here's another question. This is from Mary. She says, what is your take on the snake bearer?
Oh, the Ophiuchus.
I would take it to mean that. Yes. Mary, let us know if you mean Ophiuchus. I would think so.
I love Ophiuchus. So, I actually have a whole article on my website that I think I wrote in like 2009 or 10, I can't remember, on Ophiuchus. And I say, is it the 13th sign? So, I did this whole thing. When I research something, my God, I've got like blinders on and I can just research things for hours and I can go down the rabbit hole and whatever. So I was on Stellarium and I was going through thousands of years, literally like from like 3,500 BC to 3,000 something AD. I forget where Stellarium can't go any further. And I was tracking the movement of a fucus. And I don't remember the date because I didn't look it up, but it was somewhere around, I think, 3,200, where you see Ophiuchus, the foot of Ophiuchus actually starts to descend through the ecliptic.
Mm.
Before that, it was above, but it actually starts to step through. And technically, zodiacal constellations are supposed to be what the sun can move through. And the sun does move through the foot of Ophiuchus. So Ophiuchus is technically the 13th sign. But I remember I got a lot of flack for talking about that because the issue is for like genuine astrologers who are like, that's their craft, that's what they study, they're devoted to it. They get a lot of like attacks from science people going, there, your sign is wrong. The zodiac has been calculated wrong. Astrologers are wrong. And they use a fucus to kind of like, belittle the astrology profession, the community, etc. So I've noticed that in the astrology community, there's a lot of like, nope, we're not going to talk about a fucus because it's become this like science versus astrology argument.
Right.
Um, so living sky, Ophiuchus is there and it's on the ecliptic. And Ophiuchus's foot crossed the ecliptic around 3,200 BC. I don't quote me on that exact date because I have it somewhere and I didn't prepare the date, but it was somewhere around there, which incidentally is like when language all popped up all over the world, 3,200 BC, like
Yeah.
everywhere, you know? So I love Ophiuchus. Um, and I did entire teachings on Ophiuchus in Stargate Mystery School. Yeah, so I'll just leave it at that. But hopefully that was
Yeah.
insightful.
It's so fascinating. I was studying the ancient Sumerian sky map recently for a presentation I did, and they had 18 constellations originally, which sometime around 1500 BC got boiled down to the 12 that we use now. But it included Orion, it included Ophiuchus, and there were actually three different constellations that they saw in Pisces and Pegasus.
Mm-hmm.
So fascinating.
You're talking about like the primordial field?
Yes, yes, the
Yes,
field where everything comes from. Yes.
I love that one.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
so amazing.
Yeah.
I
It's like
so much more
that's
there.
essentially the pet for anybody out there. It's like the Pegasus square, which we're told is the winged horse. But it's funny because when you put on the imagery on Stellarium, all you see is the horse's front parts. There's no back parts because they just kind of slapped it in there. Before that, it was the Sumerian primordial field. It was the well bucket of the Arabs. And it was essentially like a chalice, like a cup or an urn. It was pouring water onto the earth. There is so much magical, mystical energy in that constellation, especially when you start looking at the ancient history of it. So, yeah.
Yeah. And that Aquarius and Pisces next to each other are all about water,
Yes.
right? And it goes back to this like primordial ocean that we all came out of.
Yep. And then even Capricorn is starting to come out of it because he has a tail. We've kind of a lot of the more modern astrology sort of sees him as a mountain goat, and they'll even show images of him with four legs and hooves. But the ancient image, he was part mermaid or, fish. He had a fish tail and he was coming out of those primordial waters. So I love studying all this stuff. Like, it's
Yeah.
fun.
So let's see. I'm looking for, I don't see any more questions right at the moment. So everybody don't be shy. Please put your questions in the chat. Um, Judy is saying, are you familiar with Sri Yukteswar's book, The Holy Science? The introduction explains the yogas in a more accurate way.
Yes, I've went to India and studied a bunch of different Indian things. I've studied a bit of Vedic, but not like not enough at all to call myself anything. It's like, so I have heard that book, and actually Walter references his book And he and I were chatting about it. That's how I first became aware of looking at this reference. So, yes, thank you.
Okay, Valerie says that she put a question about, oh, sorry, Valerie, I see it now. So Valerie says, what about in times when the world was ruled by women, but it was also a time of unbalance? Same principles apply about the divine feminine and masculine. I'm
I think she's just asking. I mean, so here, I think I understand, but if I don't, let me know. So the point is to not be one is dominant and, in charge in a way that's coming from ego, mind, violence, aggression. And so it's ultimately about union. Um, and it's like the yin and yang, if you know that symbol, where there's like the light and the dark and the dark and the light, but ultimately they are one. That's what we're wanting to move towards, like this dominant, submissive, and then it flips and the other one dominates and submits or gets, repressed, is a storyline that is toxic. And I call it the karma of the father line because you can see it in the Greek myth of Uranus, Saturn, Jupiter. Uranus represses his children, won't let Gaia birth them, so the kids have to revolt, and then Saturn takes power. But then he starts becoming the oppressive one. He's eating his children. So Jupiter revolts and he takes power. And then Jupiter does the same thing. Like, for example, Athena is born when he eats her mother because he's told a child born of this mother is going to be more powerful than him. So he's like, oh, I don't want somebody taking my power. So he eats the mother. And she ends up being born because he gets a headache and he splits his head with an axe and she jumps out fully grown, fully armored, born out of the head of Zeus. And so like this theme of power over, power under is not what the divine feminine, the divine masculine are about ultimately, but it's what it's devolved into.
And it's like there were many layers of distortion that have accumulated along the way.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. So Mary is saying, first she said the Dogon, and then she said the Dogon fish people from Sirius, the Capricorn. And that's so interesting because also in the Sumerian, there's the Apkallu, which are also fish people.
Yep. Yes. It's a common theme in myths. And I love the Dogon. I want to go down to Africa and visit. That's like on my
Mhm.
top of my list of pilgrimage places. Um,
That's incredible. Do you want to say a little bit about the Dogon people, Harmony?
well, so for me, I'm trying to remember how I first became aware of them. So I'm very connected to Sirius. Like I have Jupiter conjunct Sirius in my chart. And I think the first time I heard of them actually was through my friend Michael O'Reilly. He's an astrologer and he has the website um, Neptune Cafe. I was going to say his email address. It's a Neptune Cafe. I used to write on it. He used to put my column on it. And he's been there. He's been to Mali. And he was gifted this really beautiful like mask from the people there. I mean, he went a long time ago. So he was kind of like the first time I heard of them. So my understanding is the Dogon are these beings that came to Earth. They came in fish form. They brought teachings. They brought knowledge and wisdom. Um, they are, supposed to be the teachers of humanity, essentially, and they came from another star system or planet. And they have association with Sirius. And then, yeah, I guess you could see them with Capricornus coming out of the water, but they're very much associated with Sirius. And then there's Series A, Series B, Series C. Like the Dogon people knew all of these astronomical details before there was even the technology to be able to see it by scientists. And then it got validated by scientists. And they're like, how did they know that? And it's like, well, these beings came from another planet and taught us and, kind of blew the mind of the scientists. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. But I love the Dogon story and mythic uh,
Yeah,
energy.
it's so fascinating.
Yeah.
Let's see, maybe one or two more questions. So Valerie says, how can we stay in the divine place in the future thousands of years? Is it possible? I wonder.
Well, so my understanding is that just like the sun rises and sets and we have day and night, and just like the moon goes through her phases, that the cycles go through phases and we go through remembering and forgetting, but it's not just like a circle that loops around and around and around. It's a spiral that goes up or goes down. And so my understanding is it's based on the choices we make as individuals and collective. Are we going to go up a spiral or are we going to stay looping? I'll tell you what I vote for. Like our DNA, exactly. So I believe that the process is to go up in the spiral. We'll still have times of forgetting, but it's not necessarily going to be like what it's been in the cycle of history here, especially, I remember in high school hating history because it was just like so much war and violence and slaughtering of people and stealing of land. And I was like, wow, I'm not really proud to be human. Like, this is like depressing stuff. And there's some horrible things, especially when I was teaching the class about the Cathars, and it's just like how they got slaughtered, literally slaughtered, million people. Just disgusting stuff. Like, so I think that if enough people raise in their consciousness and we anchor into the next spiral, a higher spiral, it will definitely be different. But it requires group participation.
Yeah, absolutely. We have to make that choice. We
Mhm.
each have a responsibility to that choice, and we are all contributing to that.
Yes.
There are so many prophecies that say, like, this is the time when the great shift happens. And then, there's in one prophecy, there's 1,000 years of peace. In another prophecy, the eagle and condor fly together. In the holy science, we're starting the upward back toward the golden ages right now. So
Yes.
there's a lot of hope in all these prophecies. That's really important, I think, for us to connect in with and hold those energies of like the rising spiral.
And I do really feel strongly that it's important to not be like, oh, let's just ascend, because ascension is descension. Like, we want to bring heaven and spirit all the way down and in. So this isn't, I remember when I first got like very spiritually activated in my 20s, I had this friend who like was telling me, we're gonna ascend. And he was like, he had a credit card with all this death and debt. And he was saying he wasn't paying his credit cards off because ascension was happening soon. And and I was like, I don't know if it works like that. And so, and but that's just like a symbol of, sometimes that can be like the thought process is like, the good people are going to ascend, the bad people are going to stay here. And I'm like, no, that's not what it is. We have to bring the light and the darkness into union. We need to heal. We need to um bring heaven to earth. I remember when I heard, oh, ascensions, the good people are going to go up and out. I was just like, I don't want to abandon this planet. Like, I love this planet. We don't need all the good people leaving so that we could just let this poor planet like be destroyed. Like, we need to all be here. And so that's why in one of the slides somewhere, I was just talking about how the work, the above work is all the beautiful spiritual work and the mind expansion, but the below work is hard. The shadow work, the therapy, getting your trauma and your wounds and your pain so that you can process and heal. That's not as like love and light, but it's literally what's going to bring heaven to earth, because that's the part where that stuff, if it's undigested, will either be stuck in it, operating from it, or we'll be using spirituality to escape it. And we won't be here now, as Ram Dass says. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Harmony, for all you've shared, your presentation, imagery. It's all so beautiful and so, so powerful to receive. So thank you for this. It's been amazing.
It's
I
fun.
do want to I want to make sure everybody knows about your free gifts and your announcement. So let
Okay.
me just and I will just first announce your free gifts. And Harmony is giving 2 free gifts, everybody. So this is amazing and very generous. So your first free gift is the free Eris Masterclass. Would you like to say a few words about that?
Yeah, so Eris is a newer body that was discovered in 2005. She's beyond the orbit of Pluto, and she's often called the goddess of discord and chaos, and that is one of her energies. But she's also an activist, a warrior goddess. She has a lot of benevolent energy. She's fierce and intense, but sometimes that's the medicine we need, right? To wake up. And so this is a masterclass I taught. I think it's like 2 hours long, and I believe it has a guided meditation at the end. And I particularly chose this one because we're about to have Chiron conjunct Eris. May 26th, late at night, 27th, early morning, Western Eastern time, just for your time zone accordingly. But it's the first of three, and we're heading into a very powerful Eris portal. So that class talks about the etymology, the mythology, the archetype, and it's just like a deep dive on Eris. So, oh, I can't hear you.
I was muted. Sorry about that. So, okay, fantastic. And yes, that is going to become so very relevant for us. So it's important to be aware of these energies coming up soon. Thank you for that. And your free gift number 2 is a month of membership in the Galactic Benefactor. Can you tell us about that?
So I do a lot of things, but one of the things is I have a membership. And so in the membership, there's horoscopes, weekly, lunar, monthly. So they come out on the new moon, not on the first of the month, yearly. There's a monthly forecast that's only membership content. The weekly is a public access content. And then there's these gate calls I do. So I do 8 solar gate calls for the solstices, equinoxes, cross quarter days. They're about an hour with teachings and a guided meditation. And then I do 12 to 13, depending on the year, lunar gate calls that come out on the new moon. So it's, free month to the membership on my website.
Okay, fantastic. And you have one more thing that you're sharing, and I'll let you speak about that, but you have these beautiful online courses available and
Oh,
another
yeah.
one coming out soon. So tell us more about that as well.
Yeah, so after the Venus retrograde class, I had a lot of students who couldn't make the class, but they wanted the Grail teaching. So I'm actually re-recording the course, taking out the Venus stuff because it was very timely. I mean, we were doing rituals on Venus retrograde and Sun Venus conjunction, and that doesn't really translate once we're past the period. So I'm reformatting the teachings, the Grail mystery teachings, the Grails in the heavens, the Grails in the body, the Sophia mysteries, and I'm actually going to have it available on demand. And I plan on getting that up by the next new moon, which is, I believe, June 6th. But I also have like a ton of courses. So like, the etymology of the stars of Virgo, that's like my Stargate Mystery School, which is a year and a day, 13 2+ hour classes moving through the constellations throughout the year, doing ritual and meditations and stuff. Astrology in Your Shadow is a course that literally helps you use your chart as a map and work with your shadow. Embodied astrology works with astrology in somatically. There's other classes, Calling in the Light, The Alchemy of the Asteroid Goddesses, and I talk about the asteroids like Juno, Ceres, Vesta, Pallas, but the pre-patriarchal myths. And then I teach like basic, like foundations of astrology, intermediate series kind of stuff. So I love teaching. It's like my favorite thing to do.
Fantastic. Yes. And everything you create is so beautiful, as I've said. I love it. And so everybody, all 3 of those links are in the chat live here on Zoom and also on YouTube. And if you're watching this later as a recording, just scroll down a little bit below the video and you will see those links there so you can easily find them. All right. Wow. Thank you once again, Harmony. This has been fantastic. And everybody listening, I hope you've received so much from this wonderful presentation and conversation. And everybody, we have one more live interview today. This is a big day. We have 5 live interviews today. So the next one will be in about 35 minutes from right now. It is coming up at 6 p.m. New York time. And it will be with Lani Yamasaki, and she is going to be sharing about the ancient Hawaiian wisdom. So that will be really beautiful and profound, I'm sure. So make sure to join me for Lani's talk, and that will be on the same Zoom link, same YouTube channel as always. So thank you once again, Harmony. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and much love to you.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Bye, everybody.